Okay, so I want you to imagine a world with absolutely no borders, like zero, no private wealth,
Right.
and maybe the most shocking part, no families or marriages at all.
Wow. Yeah. That's a lot to take in right off the bat.
It is. And now imagine someone looking you straight in the eye and saying that this radical restructuring is literally the absolute only way humanity is going to survive the next century.
I mean, it immediately puts you on the defensive, doesn't it? Like our initial instinct is just to recoil from something that completely dismantles the bedrock of how we live.
Oh, totally.
But, the argument behind that extreme vision is built on these critiques of our current society that are, well, they're surprisingly difficult to brush off.
Yeah, and that tension is exactly what we are unpacking today on this deep dive. So we're looking at a 2023 essay by an author named Zuefeng.
Right.
It's titled The Best Way Forward for Mankind, Changing the Traditional Production and Life Mode. And just for context, this was translated by Kinyu and edited by Peter.
And the fundamental premise here is pretty intense. The author argues that the Earth is just buckling under the weight of over 7 billion people.
Yeah, that population number is huge.
Exactly. And the way we currently operate, which the author calls our traditional production and life mode, has basically infected humanity with a series of incurable chronic diseases.
I think that framing of chronic diseases is super essential to understanding the author's mindset here.
It really is. I mean, if a disease is chronic, it means it's woven into the system itself, right? Like, you can treat the symptoms all you want, but the underlying rot is still there.
Right.
And Shuifeng is adamant right from the start about this. Anyone who's just sitting around waiting for science and technology to swoop in and save us, they are living in a fantasy.
Yeah, he calls rapid technological advancement merely a drop in the bucket, which I have to say, I really struggle with that kind of fatalism.
Really? Why is that?
Well, just the idea that all our, green energy initiatives and sustainable tech are essentially useless. It feels like telling someone on a sinking ship that their brand new, highly efficient water pump is just a waste of time.
That's a good analogy. But to use your sinking ship idea, the author's argument is basically that the water pump doesn't matter at all if the very design of the boat guarantees it's going to eventually tear itself apart.
Wait, so the boat itself is the problem?
Exactly. If the hull is fundamentally flawed and it's constantly generating new leaks, a high-tech pump just delays the inevitable. Like, technology might find a new energy source, right? Or maybe it optimizes the supply chain, but it doesn't alter the core behavior of the human species.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's look at that core behavior then, starting with the actual physical constraints of being human.
Right, the physical toll.
Yeah, because the essay outlines several of these systemic diseases, and the most tangible one is just the brutal math of our existence, meaning resource consumption currently exceeds the Earth's capacity for regeneration.
And the text is incredibly blunt about this. It argues that fundamentally, every single one of us is a consumer, not a creator.
Which is kind of a harsh way to look at it, but yeah.
But think about the biological and economic reality of it, No matter how much value you produce at your job or how much art you create.
You still have to eat?
Right. You, as a living organism within this current system, require a constant, massive caloric and material input. You are constantly drawing down the Earth's finite account.
Wow.
So under this traditional mode of living, depletion isn't just some worst-case scenario. It is a mathematical certainty.
And it's not even just about what we need to survive, right? Like, we don't just consume the bare minimum.
Not at all.
We consume to signal status. We consume to comfort ourselves, to, just participate in the economy. The essay heavily critiques the sheer extravagance of modern life.
Oh, absolutely. Everything from our food, clothing, housing, transportation.
Right. And even how we handle major life events, births, weddings, illnesses, funerals. It's wildly excessive.
It is. And the crucial mechanism to understand here is why society fails to curb this extravagance.
Because we do try, right?
Well, usually when a culture recognizes it is being wasteful, it tries to self-correct. It uses regulation or moral instruction, like we pass laws against pollution or we try to teach our kids to be frugal.
Right. Recycle, turn off the lights, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. But Shuifeng argues that legal and moral teachings are completely powerless against this disease.
Because, and tell me if I'm tracking this right, because if the foundational system actually rewards competition and accumulation, asking people to voluntarily be less extravagant is It's like asking water to flow uphill.
That is precisely the point. Human nature, when you place it inside a framework that equates material wealth with security and success, it will always default to hoarding and display.
You just can't regulate away a survival instinct.
You really can't.
Okay, so if the physical reality of our consumption is the first major symptom, the next logical place to look is the engine driving that consumption.
Which would be our economic models, how we actually distribute those dwindling resources.
Yeah. And the essay takes an absolute sledgehammer to the entire spectrum of modern economics, like completely impartial. It rejects both government planning and the free market.
It is a total impartial teardown. Let's start with the centralized side. The argument there is that government planning inevitably leads to impoverishment.
Because it's too clunky.
Basically, yeah. The mechanism behind this is a lack of agility. A centralized plan, no matter how well-intentioned it is just too rigid to handle the chaotic complexity of billions of human lives.
Right.
As the essay puts it, central planning will always, and this is a quote, take care of one thing and overlook another.
So, like, you try to fix grain production, and you accidentally destroy the entire transportation sector in the process.
Exactly. Unintended consequences on a massive scale.
But then, what's interesting is the author pivots and goes just as hard after the free market. He characterizes it simply as the law of the jungle.
Right. A system optimized for the strong to prey upon the weak.
Which naturally leads to massive wealth disparities. But the essay actually presents a surprisingly nuanced view of inequality here, doesn't it?
It does. It acknowledges that a wealth gap is actually entirely natural.
Really?
Yeah, because people have different baseline talents, right? They have different risk tolerances, and they apply different levels of effort.
That makes sense.
If you have two farmers, and one just works twice as hard as the other, a gap in wealth is a completely normal outcome.
So the disease only sets in when that gap becomes extreme.
Yes, exactly. Because an extreme gap moves from being a reflection of effort to being a structural weapon. It breeds deep societal conflict.
Wow. Okay.
And just like with the extravagance issue, the author insists you cannot tax or legislate your way out of extreme wealth inequality, not as long as the underlying system, that traditional mode, remains intact.
Which points directly to what the author calls the magic of money. And to be clear, the essay clarifies that money itself, in its purest form as a medium of exchange, isn't actually the problem.
Right. It's just a tool.
Exactly. The rot sets in when the pursuit of money transforms into the primary motivation for simply staying alive.
Just consider how that twists human psychology for a second.
Yeah.
If the current system forces you to view every interaction, every waking hour, and every relationship through the lens of acquiring enough currency just to secure shelter and food.
You're just living in a state of perpetual low-grade panic.
Exactly. You're surviving, not living. And the essay claims this is the root cause of widespread social turmoil and just intense personal pain.
Okay, but this leaves me with a massive unanswered question.
Lay it on me.
Well, if we are throwing out the free market because it's a jungle, and we're throwing out government planning because it's clumsy and impoverishing, and we're trying to remove the whole magic of money thing,
Yeah.
what actually motivates people to do the hard work required to keep society running?
Yeah.
I mean, if you remove the fear of starving and the desire to get rich,
Yeah.
how do you organize billions of people?
That is the gaping void this essay attempts to fill.
Really?
The underlying premise is that our current motivations, fear and greed, are actually artificial responses to a broken environment.
Okay.
So if you completely remove that systemic pressure cooker, the theory is that a more organic, cooperative human drive would naturally emerge.
That's a huge if.
It is. But to get there, the author argues, we have to understand how deeply this economic pressure has fractured our social and psychological realities first.
Right, because the economic diseases breed social diseases. The essay lists official corruption and slothful government as inevitable outcomes of this.
Yeah, the traditional mode is described as fertile soil for these issues.
Because as long as there is an adversarial relationship between the state and the individual over resources, corruption isn't just some anomaly, right? It's a feature.
Exactly, and the geopolitical equivalent of that is global conflict.
Oh, right. Wars.
Yes. The essay posits that huge military expenditures and wars are entirely unavoidable under the current paradigm. It's a simple, brutal equation.
Expanding population plus dwindling resources.
Exactly. That creates a baseline of intense competition. And then, when you overlay ideological differences on top of that desperate competition for resources, war just becomes a mathematical certainty.
It's such a dark chain of causality. And it really stems from a concept that I found to be maybe the most compelling idea in the entire text.
Oh, which one?
He calls it the loss of integrity.
Oh, yes. That's a crucial part of the argument. Let's trace the author's logic on this.
Okay.
When survival in the economic jungle demands that you outcompete your neighbor for a shrinking piece of the pie, integrity suddenly becomes a liability.
Right. You can't afford to be honest if it means you starve.
Exactly. People are heavily incentivized to cut corners, to deceive, to hoard information and resources.
And that loss of trust creates what the essay brilliantly calls the cost of communication.
Yes.
Let me try to visualize this for you. A society without integrity is essentially an engine trying to run without oil.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Every single interaction generates friction. If I want to buy a house or a nation wants to sign a trade agreement, we can't just trust each other. We have to hire lawyers, draft massive contracts, employ inspectors, set up enforcement agencies, build border walls.
It's exhausting just listing it.
It is. And all of that bureaucracy and security is the heat generated by a lack of trust.
And that friction drains an immense amount of energy from the system. It halts progress, it misallocates human potential, and it is detrimental to the welfare of literally everyone involved.
Yeah.
Eventually, an engine running with that much friction will just tear itself apart, trying to overcome its own resistance.
So we have a diagnosis here that is incredibly thorough.
Yeah.
I mean, the author has systematically declared that everything we use to manage society laws, morals, green tech, free market, central planning, they are all useless.
Useless Band-Aids.
Right. We are on a flawed boat running an engine that is melting down.
Yeah.
So the only option left, according to this text, is to build a completely new paradigm.
And this is where the essay shifts. It moves from an incisive critique of modernity into a highly radical utopian blueprint.
This is the wild part.
Yeah. The proposed solution is what Chifeng calls the second home paradigm. The stated goal is a full replication of the production and life mode of the 1,000-year world of the Kingdom of Heaven.
See, Kingdom of Heaven usually implies a spiritual state.
Right.
Or something post-death. But the essay lays this out as a literal structural blueprint for Earth right now.
It does, and the mechanics are sweeping. First, the total disintegration of all countries.
Just boom, no countries.
Gone. No nation states, no borders, just pure global cooperation and the sharing of all resources.
Wow.
Second, a strict mechanism to lower and maintain population growth so it stays permanently below the Earth's regeneration capacity.
Okay, so population control.
Right. Third, humans will, and I'm quoting here, flow around the world designedly.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning a highly mobile, borderless global population that moves based on resource availability rather than national identity.
Okay, dismantling all nations and managing the global population is an unimaginably massive undertaking.
Yeah.
But it's actually the next detail in the blueprint that made me just stop dead in my tracks.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, the author states that under this new paradigm, human beings will no longer enter into the institutions of marriage and family.
Yes. The complete abolition of the traditional family unit.
Okay, I have to push back hard on this leap in logic here.
Go for it.
I can follow the argument that borders cause friction or that, mass population strains resources. But how do you jump from we have a global resource crisis to we must abolish the family?
It seems like quite a jump.
It's huge. How is the family unit responsible for the law of the jungle?
Well, if you view the family through the cold economic lens that the author is using, the connection actually becomes clear.
Walk me through it.
The traditional family unit is essentially the smallest and most fiercely defended economic monopoly in human society. It is the primary engine for hoarding resources.
Meaning the family is basically the original corporation.
In the context of this critique, absolutely. The family divides the world into a rigid binary. My kin versus everyone else.
Right.
If your biological and social imperative is to ensure that your children have more security, more wealth, and more opportunity than the children next door, you are permanently locked into the law of the jungle.
Because you'll do whatever it takes for your kids.
Exactly. You will consume more than you need, you will hoard generational wealth, and you will compromise your integrity to protect your bloodline's interests.
Okay, wow. So to achieve the author's ultimate goal, a state where everyone owns nothing yet owns everything,
Yeah.
you had to dismantle the very concept of mine.
Yes.
And historically, the strongest anchor for private ownership is the family.
That is the core philosophical pivot of the essay right there. You cannot have a truly unified, borderless, resource-sharing global collective if people are still fiercely prioritizing their own genetic offspring over the collective good.
It's just incompatible.
Right. It requires a complete post-national, post-family reset of human allegiance.
It's staggering. I mean, we're talking about unspooling millions of years of evolutionary biology and thousands of years of cultural scaffolding.
We are.
And yet the essay makes a very specific, bold claim right at the end. The author insists this isn't just theoretical science fiction.
No, he doesn't.
He states that a model for the Second Home program has been successfully practiced on Earth for 15 years by an organization called Lifechanyuan.
It's important to provide some context here without necessarily endorsing the claim, of course.
Of course.
The essay points to Lifechanyuan as a real-world group that has essentially been running a micro-experiment of this exact blueprint.
A proof of concept.
Basically, the assertion is that within this specific community, they have supposedly operated without traditional families, without private wealth, and with complete resource sharing for a decade and a half.
But this is where skepticism is absolutely necessary. Claiming a micro-society of willing participants has survived for 15 years is vastly different from proving this model can scale to over 7 billion people.
Oh, completely different.
It raises immediate questions about how you enforce that kind of compliance globally. Do you need immense authoritarian pressure to keep people from forming traditional bonds or, claiming private property? The essay doesn't really grapple with the logistics of that transition.
And that's the critical blind spot in many utopian blueprints.
They gloss over the transition.
Right. They often assume that once the correct system is implemented, human nature will instantly conform to it without resistance.
Right.
The author presents Lifechanyuan as a proven, functional prototype and calls for the citizens of the world to study and practice it. But whether a localized experiment can survive the complexities of global scaling is highly debatable.
So what is the takeaway for you listening to this deep dive?
It's a lot to process.
It is incredibly easy to hear a proposal like dissolve all nations and abolish the family and just write the whole thing off as an extreme fringe theory.
Very easy.
But the actual value of wrestling with a text like this isn't really about whether you want to move into the second home paradigm tomorrow. It's about the uncomfortable mirror it holds up to our current reality.
The diagnosis is undeniably potent. I mean, we all interact with the severe friction of the cost of communication every single day.
Every day.
We all witness the destructive extravagance of modern consumption and the deep anxieties driven by the pursuit of money.
Yeah.
By taking those very relatable, universally felt problems and accelerating them towards such a radical cure, the text forces a reevaluation of our baseline assumptions.
It challenges you to look around and ask, which of the structures governing my life are actually permanent laws of nature and which are just the traditional modes I happen to have inherited?
Exactly.
Is this the only way a complex society can operate or just the way we're currently used to?
And it leaves us wrestling with the tension between our evolutionary wiring and our survival needs.
Exactly. Even if you accept the premise that this 15-year micro-experiment achieved harmony, it leaves you with a profound, lingering question.
Yeah.
How does any group of humans manage to completely suppress the deeply ingrained instinct for competition, for ownership, and for preferring your own kin?
It's a huge hurdle.
If we were to adopt this owns nothing yet owns everything model, could we really design a system so perfect that those old chronic diseases wouldn't eventually find a way to creep right back in?
Because if they do creep back in, it implies the disease isn't just in the system, it's in us.
And if that's the case, we might just be doomed to keep inventing new, slightly better Band-Aids for the exact same broken human nature.
Wow.
Something to chew on the next time someone promises a quick, structural fix to a global crisis. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.